Hello viewers, welcome back. So hopefully you saw in my last video how I fixed the RAM recorder for my Quantel Paintbox Express. Now it's working. I wanted to make some new intros for the YouTube channel and also start getting my head around how to create better effects and just learn how to use it better. So I thought it'd be fun to show you some of the things that you can do by actually create a version of the intro that you saw at the beginning of this video. So before we get started, I'll just clarify a few things. I'm effectively using what would be a Quantel Harriet Express here, though I think my combination of the Paintbox Express with the RAM recorder would probably be a bit unusual back in the day. I think most Harriets would have been using the original Paintbox hardware and lacked the Express features. The reason I think this is the overall cost this setup. It would have meant that it would have been far better to spend money on a system like HAL or Henry due to the limitations of the Harriet system. So I think it might have been a bit of an unusual combination to have you know, the additional expense that the Paintbox Express with all the options like I've got on here, like transform effects and the image processing card. You would have been better off just buying a HAL. So I think that's why it would be a bit unusual to have this set up. So if we have a look at the paste up items that I've already got here, I've created these when I created that original animation. So let's just wipe the screen to white. So we've just got a plain white background. I'm going to go into paste up and we can see the animation that I've got set up. So it's consisting of 275 frames and we have two paste up items which are just the Dexter's Lab logo, a couple of versions of that, and they just animate. So if we look at the this foreground one, you can see here that the style is fading up. It's all fixed on the spin until this keyframe here, and then it starts to come away, move towards us and spin, and then eventually it fades out again to nothing, and then this logo in the background just stays static. So let's switch to this other logo. So we can see here it just fades in like the other one does, and just does a couple of spin operations and size as well. So if I switch over to that, you can see the size increasing through those keyframes, and then it stays fixed, and then the spin will return to all zeros and it'll stay static for the remainder of the clip. So after that point there, when this logo here is faded out, nothing else happens. Now obviously that all looks okay, but it's a bit dull and boring just to have a white background and these logos. So what we're going to do is bring some video in and put that onto the background, apply some effects to it, just to make it look a little bit more interesting. So what we're going to do now is switch over to the animation section. Let's just reset those back to 1, go over to animation, and we're going to turn on the RAM recorder and macros because we're going to need those. So I'm going to turn on the looping function for the macros. So if we go into the RAM recorder, this is where we're going to store the video that's going to be on the background of the paste up items. So what we need to do is set up the RAM recorder so it's working to the same number of frames as the animation that we got set up. So we want these two boxes here, result and background. What these allow you to do is when the animation is rendered, these locations here are where the result is rendered to, and the background clip is where it pulls the background frames from. Now these can be the same or different. So what this means is, let's say for example we had a very short background clip, let's say it was 10 frames. So that is basically saying frame 1 to 10 of the background, and the result would could be 20 to 20, say. So the frames of video that would be in frames 1 to 10 would be taken read by the Paintbox. The paste up items would be placed over the top, and then the result is written back to the result section. So what this means here is you can have long or short clips, and you can actually tell them to loop. And what you're seeing here is just the uninitialized RAM in the RAM recorder. So you can actually see here, if I scroll through, this is all just where the memory store in the RAM recorder has just been uninitialized because I've just turned it on. So what I think we'll do first is we're going to set the result to 1 to 275. So what that means is we're going to take all the frames, we're going to put the animation on them and then write them back to the same place. So the background result clips are the same. So we're just going to go back to painting. We're going to wipe the screen, and what I'm going to do is just record or white to the RAM recorder, just so we don't have that uninitialized memory there. So what that's doing now is just writing those frames to the RAM recorder, and it'll come back in a second, or probably about 11 seconds, because that's what 275 frames is. So what we need to do now is get some video into this so we can create some effects on it and make it look a bit more interesting. So I have an old video camera here connected up to a video scaler that converts the video into SDI, and then that goes into the second input channel on my Paintbox. So what I can do, I can actually bring this in on the digital, one of the digital inputs. So we've got video there. So I'm just going to wave something interesting in front of the camera, just to create some kind of video background which might look interesting. So what I've got is just a circuit board. This actually came out of that digital Betacam machine. I'm just going to wave this in front of the camera just to give us some kind of electronic background for the video. So I'm just going to hold this down in here, wait for the camera to focus. And what I'm going to do is just touch the screen, and that will record 275 frames into the RAM recorder. I'm just going to press record, wave this around a little bit. There we go. So now we have that video in the RAM recorder. So the next step is to actually do something which makes it a little bit more interesting. So we're going to be using macros to run through the entire RAM recorder and apply some effects. So what we need to do is set up the buy and sell features, which allows me to use the joystick to load and save frames from the RAM recorder, because we're going to use those in the macro. So the buy and sell has now been set up, so frame 1 is sold, and then frame 2 is bought, and then the cycle will repeat as we repeat the macro. So turn these off and head over to effects. Now what I think I might do is just soften this image off a little bit. It's a bit harsh, and you can see a lot of the interlacing lines and all sorts of stuff. So I'm just going to use a blur on this. So what we're going to do is turn on blur. If I just get the blur level about right, so that's 1.5. Now I've got the first frame done. I'm now going to start the macro, so it's going to be simply a case of pressing record. I'm just going to press next, and then I just need to do all again, and it's blurred it, and now I'm ready for the next repeat. So I'm going to turn off record, and what I can do now is just press the do button, which is just going to repeat the macro now until it gets to the end of the clip. So I'll just set that going. It's going to take a little bit of time, so I'll come back to it when it's finished. Okay, so that is all finished, so we can have a quick look at that in the animation. I can just play out that video, so it's been softened off a little bit. Now we have some video in there. I can actually show you how this actually works in terms of the paste up items. So if I just wipe this screen down to white again, and we look again at the animation that we saw earlier, there's no background. Now to tell the camcorder to bring in the background and place it on the background, we just hit the background button, and what that does, it takes each consecutive frame from the background clip and puts it on the background. So this will now animate both together. It's already starting to look a little bit more interesting. I'll just click on the try it to do an animated preview. Now I think the background is still a little bit dull. I want to put some more effects on it, so we're going to head back to the effects section and we'll put some more effects on top. So in effects, what we're going to use is the transform FX option. Now this is only available on the Paintbox Express, and it's one of those extra features that I mentioned. I think transform effect arrived in about 1996, I think, and basically it's a function which it's like an automated painting function. What it does, it takes the paintbrush and then applies it all over the image. Sequentially, but with some quite finely definable parameters. So if I just, you can see the image here that I've got. If I just do the default settings, you can see here what it's done is you've got a certain little circle that's been positioned out all across the screen. Now that is actually the standard paintbrush. So paint, chalk, air, and we have custom as well because we have the Paintbox Express. So what that means is I can actually change that to the airbrush, so it creates a slightly softer point, and we can also do the chalk brush, and we can also, if I switch back to the paintbrush, we can actually change various parameters here. So we can change the pitch, size. So we can start creating some really weird effects depending on how you set these up. We also have a dither function, so we can actually dither these. So every time this effect is applied, it alters and dithers a little bit. So it'll effectively look like that when it's animated. We can change the ordering of the pattern. We can actually have the original picture underneath. So we can create some really interesting effects. For example, with the airbrush, if I turn off the background picture, sort of create like a honeycomb pattern thing there. There's so many different combinations of stuff that you can try to get different effects. It's really quite a cool thing to play around with. Now, because we have Paintbox Express, we also have custom brushes, so we can actually define our own brush which is used to create this effect. So if I just reset all of those back to default, and go into painting and actually change the brush. I've got a few here already, like for example I've got a star, which you can see there, it's just a star, so I can actually apply that to transform effects. I bring the size up a bit and the pitch. You can see there it's using the star as the paintbrush. So if I turn on the background picture, we'll end up with like little stars appearing all over the place. Right, now what we're going to use in this case is just a simple square block. So if I turn off the picture there, you can just see it's just squares. So I'm going to change the pitch of this so we can actually see a little bit more of the picture in the background. About there. So you kind of still see that it's a bit of a circuit board. And what we're going to also do is dither this, so there's a slight shimmer to everything. So let's round some of these numbers up, so 7, 8. So yeah, that should create an interesting effect, I think. Just like the blur, we need to apply this to the whole of the camcorder, so we just need to go back, reset the buy and sell to be 1 and 2, because we're going to start again, back into effects. So we're going to start the macro recording, record, next, stop record, and now we can just play it through again, and it's going to apply this to the whole clip. So again, I'll leave that going and we'll come back in a minute or two. Right, so that's all finished, so let's have a look again in the animation and just play it out. So yeah, definitely a little bit more of an interesting effect going on there. So what we're going to do now is, I think I'm going to render the paste up items over the top of this, and then we're going to apply some more effects once that's been finished. So I'm going to go into paste up, and we're going to render these bits of animation over the top of this clip. So we'll just reset that back down. Background is on. So the only thing that remains is to literally press go. So that is now rendering those animated sections on top of that video and then writing it back to the camcorder. Right, that's all finished. So let's have a look at what we've got so far. Yeah, it doesn't look too bad, but I think this bit here, we need to add a bit more into it, just to make it a little bit more interesting. So I think what we're going to do is head back to Transformer Effects, and we're going to start blurring this logo into the background, and then I think we'll just explode the whole thing. So if we head back to Effects, and we apply the same effect that we did before. Now that's applying it to the whole image, and what we need to do is try and blur or blend from that to the point where it's blended in the same as the background. But the problem is that this is all now one single image, so the way we get around this is I've actually got a stencil already set up that masks off this logo from the background. I can load that in and I can apply the effect through the stencil, so the background isn't affected. So I'm just going to load that. I use the stencil. And now what I can do, I can actually change these settings here, and it only works on the actual logo area that I want. So what I'm going to need to do is try and reduce this down so it looks as close as it does to the original. So turn the dither off. It's taking a bit of time because it's actually rendering the entire screen, even though I can only see this bit here. So that's pretty much as it was. So let's just select one. And so let's just try that. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And what we're going to do, we're going to use a macro again to animate this to slowly bring it from these values here up to the 7 and 8 and the dither that we had before. Now, unlike before, we can't just like let the macro run and just run to the end of the clip. What we need to do is limit how long this is going to last for, and that determines how quickly this effect is going to be applied. So I think probably if it takes 1 or 2 seconds, that should be enough. So we're going to limit the macro length to 50. So we're running 25 frames a second, so that'll take 2 seconds to animate. And we also need to set where we're going to start from. So if we head back to the camcorder and we scroll through this, I think probably if we start at maybe frame 150, so that will take us to frame 200, which would be about there for this logo to blend in with the background. So we need to set our buy and sell to be 150 and 151. So it's going to start at frame 150 and then just carry on through for 50 frames. Actually, just thinking about this, I'm going to probably do the first frame, so it's actually going to be 49. So go back to effects. Right, so we need to set up the macro now to slowly increment these numbers over the period of the 50 frames to come up to the same values that we had before, which was 7, 8 and 1, if I remember, yes. So we're going to use the macro for that, and there is some handy functions in the numerical input which allow us to do that. Now effectively this is frame 150 and it's already rendered, so I can just write that one out to the camcorder. And now we need to start the macro to start increasing those numbers from here on. So we're going to start the macro, we're going to tap on the pitch and we're going to increment by 0.12 increment. Let that render. Size is the same, 0.12. And the dither which is going to be 0.02. And that, once that's rendered, we then click onto the next frame. Stop recording, and now we can set the macro going to complete the rest of the task for us. So it's going to slowly render away, slowly increasing these values till we get to roughly 7, 8 and 1. So I'll come back in a moment or two when it's finished. Okay, there we are, the macro's finished, and yeah, you can see there the logo's pretty much blended into the background. So let's clear that off and we'll have a quick look at it in the camcorder. So yeah, I think that looks quite nice actually, how it sort of blends into the background up to frame 200. So what we're going to do now is apply transform effects again, but to the entire screen, and actually sort of blow it up into large big blocks as like a fade out kind of thing. we move back to frame 200, oh, it's actually 201. That is where we're left off anyway, so that can stay as it is. So we're going to go back to transform effects. We're going to turn off the stencil now because we don't need it. And we're going to again animate these settings here, so it explodes it into a really big blocks. So let's just have an experiment with that. So we'll probably need to come up to something around there. So maybe 70. And that, I'll do that one at 70 as well. And then we'll probably increase the dither to 5 maybe. Just make them a little bit more jiggly. Once we've worked out the number of frames to do this over. So I always have a 1 second pause at the end of the intro. So that means we need to go to frame 250, which gives us a total number of frames of, well, let's say it's about 50 frames, say. It doesn't matter if things run over just by 1 or 2 frames. So it will go from here to about here. So that means that the values that we want to put into here will be incrementing by 1.26, 1.24 and 0.08, and that'll cover about 50 frames. So I'm just going to set that up and I'll let it run, and we'll see what it looks like. Okay, that's done, so let's have a look at what it looks like. That looks pretty good actually. So yeah, these bits stop and then it slowly blends into the background, and then the whole thing just explodes up, which is great. So what we need to do on the last little section is to just hold that level of animation there and just let it run out. So let's just do that now. Ended up on frame 152. So that's all set up. We can go back to effects. So let's just render those out. So we just click on pitch to do the effect, press record, click next, stop recording, and then repeat. And there you can see it's ended up in the unused part of the camcorder there, so let's go back. And there you see the size holds, and we just have this shimmer effect, which is probably where I would fade into my actual feature. So let's just play that out from the beginning. So yeah, that looks pretty good. Now what I think I might do is just what I do when I take the video from this and put it onto my PC for incorporation into sort of a modern, my modern editor. I actually crop this to 16 by 9 because this is 4 by 3 at the moment, so I normally crop this to 16 by 9 just so it fits the modern widescreen ratio a bit better. And I think what I'm going to do is actually just blend in the tops and bottom to the 16 by 9 so when I crop it I have a nice faded effect at the top and the bottom. So let's just reset everything back to the start. This is going to be 274 frames, and what we're going to do now is bring down a picture of my 16 by 9 crop. So these two lines here are where I crop the image to. So we're just going to need to create a faded effect between those that we can use to put over the top of the animation to blur it out. I guess I could probably do that in my my editor on my PC, but you can do it on the Paintbox, why not? The whole point of this is like playing with old tech, isn't it? So we're going to go into graphics. We want rectangles, we want them faded, and we're going to fade from black to white, because we're actually going to create a stencil. So we're going to wipe the stencil and do draw. I'm just going to draw some faded lines here and here. Here and here. So that will mask off the top and bottom areas and just blend in just this little part here to black. So now if we go into animation, get frame 1 again, do painting, stencil, and if we wipe this to black, we're going to have to reverse that. If we wipe that to black, these little things that you just forget to do. I forgot to turn on the stencil there, so the good thing is I haven't actually changed what's in the camcorder. So use stencil, wipe, and that creates a nice faded effect at the top and bottom. So again, macros, we just need to do that to all the 274 frames. So back to the camcorder, buy and sell is set to 1 and 2. Macro is already set up, 274 frames. Painting, use stencil. I'm going to turn on the recording of the macro. We're going to do wipe and then next. Turn off the recording and then we can just press go. There we go, that's done. So back to the camcorder and turn on loop. We'll play it out. Right, so I hope you found that one interesting. A little bit of exploration into creating animations and effects on the Quantel Harriet. So I hope you found that one interesting. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Comments, always welcome in the comments section. Thanks to everybody who supports this channel, my channel sponsor, PCBWay, my patrons who consistently put money into the pot to make videos. Thank you very much. So I'll see you on the next video. Bye for now. And if you want to see something really interesting and glitchy, because we all love a bit of video glitching, what happens when we turn off the camcorder and then turn it back on again? Let's see. So I'm just going to turn it off and then switch the actual machine off just for about half a second. Back on again. Go to the camcorder. And we have a ready glitched version, because all that DRAM that's in the camcorder started to fade away. So we actually have a really weird glitched up version of the animation. Isn't that cool?